आंसर राइटिंग के दो सबसे बड़े चैलेंज हैं। पहला है योर मोटिवेशन टू कंटिन्यू एंड सेकंड मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट इज असेसमेंट। असेसमेंट बहुत टफ टास्क है क्योंकि जब तक सब्जेक्ट एक्सपर्ट नहीं होगा तब तक असेसमेंट राइट नहीं हो सकती। और ये आपको पता चलेगा जब हमारे वेबसाइट पे जाएंगे और देखेंगे मोर देन 500 टॉपर्स कॉपी। एक सब्जेक्ट एक्सपर्ट के साथ असेसमेंट, प्रैक्टिस, लर्निंग, इंप्रूवमेंट का मतलब क्या होता है? दिस इज द रियल पर्पस ऑफ द टेस्ट सीरीज एंड आंसर राइटिंग एंड दिस इज व्हाट प्रिसाइजली वी डू एट जीएस स्कूल।
Good morning everyone. My name is Dhwani Agarwal. I have secured rank 215 in UPSC CSE 2024. This was my third attempt at UPSC Civil Services examination and I have cracked the examination with law optional. Particularly here I would want to share my law optional strategy with everyone who is wanting to clear the examination with the law optional. Firstly, something about my background. I have done my graduation, that is BLLB Honours, the integrated course in law from National Law Institute, University Bhopal. Thereafter, I appeared for my first attempt in UPSC Civil Services examination and I reached till the interview stage in my first attempt. After that, I gave another attempt and I also joined masters side by side at National Law University, Delhi. And this was my third attempt and this time I could make it to the list. So firstly, something about how to choose the optional before going or delving deeper into the law optional strategy that I would want to share with everyone. Optional, I believe, is something that is a make or break when it comes to getting your name in the list for UPSC, because optional carries a weightage of around 500 marks. There are two papers of optional and these two papers can actually really affect the merit of the examination. So with respect to optional, I believe that optional is something that requires a lot of time and you have to spend a lot of time revising your optional as well as studying your optional. So what I believe is that optional should be something that you are really interested in and optional should be a subject that you can actually spend a lot of time with and still not get bored with. Particularly in my case, since I was a law graduate and I had done law from a good institute, I believe that I had kind of an edge when it came to law, and also I was naturally more inclined towards studying something that I had already covered during my graduation years. When it comes to choosing the optional, there are a lot of views that one should go for an optional where the syllabus is lesser, or say for example optionals that are more scoring. However, I firmly believe that one should always go for an optional that is one is more interested in, more inclined towards, and what is the strength for someone. Say for example, if you are a graduate in political science, you definitely have an edge in political science and you can definitely go for political science and international relations as your optional. In my case, that was law, so I opted for law. Now, particularly, first I would like to talk about my sources and strategy for law optional. So, here I believe that when it comes to sources should be limited, sources should be as less as possible, because what I realized after analyzing a lot of past year papers of the law optional is that the level of the paper or the level of the questions that are being asked in the law optional paper is not a very high or a very advanced level. The questions are very basic graduation level questions that we have already covered during our graduation years in law school. So it is not that we require some very advanced books or some very advanced materials to cover the syllabus for law optional. So my strategy was to cover all the topics that are mentioned in the syllabus for both paper 1 and paper 2 from the basic books that I will be sharing with you right now, and along with that substantiating that with some kind of value added material that I came across in newspapers, or say for example few online articles, etc. So law optional has two papers, paper 1 and paper 2. Paper 1 deals with constitutional law, administrative law and public international law, while paper 2 deals with smaller subjects, say for example like torts, mercantile law, contract law, contemporary legal developments, law of crimes, etc. So my strategy for the first paper was that since constitutional law, administrative law and public international law are subjects that most law graduates have dealt with at depth during their graduation years, there is definitely some kind of edge that one can take in paper 1, or it can also depend upon the fact that if somebody is interested in constitutional law, public international law, then definitely this paper is their strength, as it was in my case. So my strategy was to cover the syllabus for constitutional law and public international law from basic books. So there were just basically 2 or 3 books that I referred to and made very short and crisp notes on those all the topics of the syllabus. So for constitutional law, I basically referred to AK Jain. In law school years, we call it Dukki also. It's a very small book. It covers all the concepts in very crisp and brief details. And then basically, I had another book which was MP Jain. MP Jain is a bulky book on constitution, but if there are few topics that AK Jain doesn't cover in detail, so for those topics I referred to MP Jain. But that was basically for reference purpose only. I did not cover the book in detail. Similarly, for public international law also, I referred to a number of sources. Since there is not one single source for public international law, it's a very dynamic subject. It is changing, it changes a lot with time. So I referred to 2 or 3 sources. Basically, again, AK Jain, that is the Dukki. I referred to a book called Singla. And apart from that, whatever was happening in the news, especially the developments of ICJ and ICC that were all in news because of the war in Israel and the war in Russia. So all of those kind of topics I was basically covering from the editorials that were coming in the Hindu and the Indian Express. That gave a lot of legal perspective, and I used to make short notes on them as well. So this was basically these were basically my overall sources for paper 1. For paper 2, I believe that paper 2 has a lot of topics. Paper 2 is very lengthy in the sense that the number of topics are more. However, the topics do not require a lot of time because these are shorter topics. So particularly for the law of crimes, I refer to a book called Pillai, which most of us have seen in our law schools, and along with that AK Jain. For law of torts, again I refer to AK Jain and Bangia. Bangia again for reference purposes. And law of contracts, I refer to basically AK Jain. And along with that, there are few topics that are not there in AK Jain. So for those topics, I basically relied on online sources and made very small notes for those topics. And particularly for mercantile law, so mercantile law is something that one cannot find at one place, or there are not particularly good books that are available when it comes to covering mercantile law for UPSC. So for that, you can refer to a lot of notes of coachings that are available freely online, and you can make your own short notes which you can revise before the examination. And the most tricky part of paper 2, I believe, is the part of contemporary legal developments. So contemporary legal developments have a lot of topics. It consists of environmental law also, competition law also, intellectual property rights also, PIL also. So it is very varied. It covers a lot of topics. And again, there is no one particular book that one can refer for contemporary legal developments. So again, it has to be a mix and match of a number of sources. One has to refer to online sources also at times. One has to substantiate with whatever is happening in the current scenario also, and at the same time use certain case laws that one has come across in different subjects, say for example in constitution law, etc. So those were basically my sources for Now that we have already discussed that what are the broad sources for paper 1 and paper 2 of the law optional, as well as the broad strategy that one can refer to while dividing their time between other papers of GS, prelims and the optional, as well as also the answer writing, I'd now like to discuss that how one can go about attempting the paper, because when it comes to mains answer writing, attempting the paper becomes something that becomes very important, because how one attempts the paper, how one presents their answers, how one basically identifies the issues that are being asked in the question and then respond to them accordingly will determine how many marks they will fetch in the examination. So when it comes to attempting the paper, usually in optional papers the pattern is that there are two parts in every paper. In every part, that is paper 1 will have part A and part B, and paper 2 will also have part A and part B. There is a compulsory question that one has to choose from both the parts, and then there are 3 questions that one has to choose out of the other 6 questions that are there in both the parts. So here choosing the right questions becomes very important, because one has to identify areas that one is strong in. One has to identify their strengths, and accordingly one has to attempt those questions in the paper. So with respect to paper 1 that deals with constitution law and public international law, since I had an edge in constitution law because of my natural interest in the subject, I made up my mind that I will be choosing 2 questions from constitutional law and just 1 question from public international law out of the questions that were there for the which were basically optional to choose from, and the compulsory questions have to be attended by everyone, so there is no choice over there. So as I said, I identified my strength during my practice only, during my test series practice only, and therefore I did not waste a lot of time in the main exam while choosing the area from which I wanted to pick up more questions from. So that is something that becomes very important while one is writing the test series, that one should definitely identify their strengths and then play to their strengths in the main examination, because in the examination hall there is no time to think about these things, and also there is a lot of pressure that builds upon in the main examination. So if one is already prepared about all of these things, that only eases the burden to an extent. Similarly for paper 2 in my law optional also, I recognized that subjects like law of crimes and law of torts are my strength as compared to, say, for example, contract law or mercantile law or contemporary legal developments, and therefore I chose more questions from that part rather than the second part. So that was how I identified my strengths and played to them during my examination. Now, something with respect to presentation when it comes to law papers is most people who have done their law from law schools would know about this format which is known as the FILAC format. So in what FILAC format is that when there are practical questions or there are hypotheticals in law optional, basically wherein a situation is presented that such thing has happened and one has to apply the law to that situation. So I will suggest that one should go for the standard FILAC format. So what is the FILAC format? The FILAC format is basically where we first of all present facts, that is F facts. The main problem that has been presented to us can be summed up in few lines, and those are the facts. Then one has to identify the issues, that is the I in FILAC. One can identify 2 or 3 issues from that problem and that becomes your I. Then one has to come up with the law in that regard. So if there is a particular, say for example, problem regarding a murder case that has been given in the problem question, so one can definitely identify the law on murder and culpable homicide, etc. that we have in India. One can mention the sections of BNS and one can also mention other statutes that are applicable in that particular case. Then comes the A, which is the application part. So this is the most important part, because once we have already identified that what are the facts, what are the issues and what is the law that is applicable, then that has to be applied to that particular case that has been given in the problem question. And once the application part is done, then one can come to the conclusion that so and so person is guilty or not, or what is the liability of the person in a particular case, or what are the damages that are payable, whatever it is according to the question that has been given, that conclusion or that concluding remark can be given in a line or two. So that is how one can attempt the hypothetical questions or the practical questions in the paper. Most questions are though theory questions, and theory questions, I think the format is the standard format that everyone follows for in even the GS papers, and that is, I believe, that one should start with the introduction. Introduction, in 1 or 2 lines one can introduce the topic, or if, say for example, a question is asked about theft in the law of crimes, so one can obviously start with the section of theft in BNS, and then once the section of theft has been mentioned, then one can go about the ingredients of theft. Those can be substantiated with a number of landmark case laws on the topic. If there is some contemporary development related to the law on theft, say for example, a latest judgment in this regard by the Supreme Court clarifies the meaning more, or gives a lot of clarity on the definition of the crime or the offense, then that can also be mentioned for some kind of value addition. And finally, the conclusion, wherein everything that has been presented in the introduction and the body can be concluded very neatly in a line or two, just so that a closure can be provided to the checker or to whoever sees your answer copy, and it basically gives a much more better holistic view to the answer if it is concluded very nicely in a line or two. So that is about attempting the paper. Now, when it comes to law optional, something which is very important is that not only the syllabus of the paper is bulky, but at the same time, attempting the paper also takes a lot of time, because every answer has to be substantiated with a number of case laws, with a number of articles from the constitution, with a number of sections from various statutes. So when all of that has to be done in a very restricted time period, it becomes very difficult to incorporate everything that has been read or everything that has been memorized. So my suggestion in that regard is that one should definitely go for the pointer format when it comes to writing the answers, because there is not a lot of time that is available to a person to write the answers. Time is very limited. In 10 marker one hardly gets 7 to 8 minutes, and in the 15 marker one hardly gets 9 to 9.5 minutes, and in those 7 minutes or 9 minutes one has to give a holistic viewpoint of the topic, and identify the question, identify the main crux of the question that is being asked, and also respond to each and every part of the question, because sometimes there are multiple parts to a single question and all of them have to be responded to. So all of that has to be done in that given time period, along with the case laws and the sections and the constitutional articles and the various authorities. So when that has to be done, time management becomes a very important skill, and time management can only be developed with practice. I remember when I had just started doing my answer writing, I wrote my first test for the optional. I could hardly complete 15 to 16 questions out of the 20 questions. But constant practice over a period of 3 to 4 months, that is the preparation time between the prelims and the mains, basically improved my speed, basically improved my time management skills, my skills to handle pressure and deal with questions in a way that I can sum them up even if I have lesser time with me. So all of those skills take a lot of time to develop. That will come only with practice, as I said. So writing a lot of tests during the 3 to 4 months of mains preparation, constantly evaluating them, constantly self-evaluating them to see how the same can be presented in a better format, or how the same material can be presented in a way that it uses lesser words or lesser space. All of those are skills that one only develops with practice. So that is something that becomes very important while it comes to attempting the paper. Here, as I have already mentioned, the mocks that one gives, analyzing those mocks, evaluating those mocks, joining a test series just for discipline and self-evaluation, these things will become very important during the preparation. And needless to say, multiple revisions is something that will make attempting the paper much easier, because there is not a lot of time while one is attempting the paper to memorize or recall. So things have to be on your tips, and you just have to reproduce them on the sheet of paper on the day of the exam. So that is about attempting the paper. And one thing I think that a lot of people don't talk about is definitely there is a lot of mental strain while one is giving the mains exam. But there is also physical strain while one is giving the mains exam, because two papers have to be written in a single day, and each paper is of 3 hours each. So there's a lot of one also gets very tired writing the exams. So that habit also has to be developed during the answer writing practice only. And when you are practicing during your preparation at home, you are giving 2 papers in a day, so that you are prepared for the examination day. और जहाँ पे आपको एक ही दिन में 3-3 घंटे 2 बार लिखना होगा, तो वहाँ पे आपकी वो प्रैक्टिस बन जाएगी. इफ यू हैव ऑलरेडी डन दैट ड्यूरिंग योर प्रिपरेशन एट होम, तो वो आपको फिर वहाँ पे फिजिकली स्ट्रेनुअस नहीं लगेगा, because if that happens, that can actually hamper your performance in the main examination. So that is how I believe that paper has to be attempted, and that is how I believe कि आपको प्रिपरेशन के टाइम से ही वो सब चीजें की आदत डाल लेनी चाहिए जो मेन एग्जाम वाले दिन होने वाला होगा आपके साथ. थैंक यू.